Been one change in the program, and that's our next athlete builder being inducted as Jack MacKenzie. We had Jacqueline Poirier listed as the presenter. Carl Marsh is going to pinch hit there. Carl, please come forward. How you doing,
buddy? There are many words to describe Jack MacKenzie: loving son, father, grandfather, player, coach, builder, and mentor, to name just a few. Jack was born on February 24th, 1912, in Westville, Nova Scotia. Yes, initially he was a mainlander, but not for long. His family moved to Waterford when he was a young boy. They became true Cape Bretoners and fully embraced the Waterford lifestyle. Although his sports career was always busy, Jack managed to find time to meet and marry a pretty little French girl, Effie Chesson, and together they raised 5 children: Jackie Jr., deceased, Cece, Joni, Lucille, and the youngest son, Claudia. They're here tonight. Jack grew up in the town playing all types of sports and becoming himself an outstanding athlete. Playing in the streets and vacant fields of New Waterford, he acquired a love of all sports, as well as developing his organizational and mentoring skills. A natural leader, young Jack made sure that all the teams were evened out each day in order to ensure the best possible games possible. He had a keen sense of the other players' strengths and weaknesses, and this skill served him well throughout his adult coaching days and allowed him to develop into a sports icon he would later become. And I can attest to that greatly, okay? Jack's story is so intertwined with that of the Strand Gym in New Waterford that it's necessary to fill you in on a bit of that history. Now, the Strand Gym, which a lot of you younger people don't even know, it's not here anymore. That was originally, it came from Glace Bay in 1920, and it was originally a theater. When it was purchased by Mount Carmel Parish as a place for originally bingo to increase the parish funds. By 1934, it had a functioning gymnasium on the first level, which could accommodate large dances as well as basketball games, complete with lockers. Upstairs, there was a large room that accommodated the early New Waterford boxing club. And the great Johnny Nemus had a room there where he trained and coached a lot of great New Waterford boxers, such as Blair Richardson, who became North American or Commonwealth champion. Les Gillis, a lot of people don't know. He was North American lightweight champion. He won that in New York. Tommy Gunn Spencer, Red McPherson, the great Tony Odo, to name a few. They all made their Strand their second home. Now, they trained on the top floor in the room, and they also, besides when it was first used as bingo, then it became used as the basketball court, then the great dances. The Friday night in the Waterford dances, for example, with Gib Whitney's orchestra, was the best in the island, okay? And also, the baseball players that used to play in the baseball field used to dress there and walk up to the field, and they played a game and come back because they had a place to change and wash. And the great hockey teams, especially the 1947 New Waterford Strands, which won the Cape Breton Championship in Sydney in the Cape Breton League. 93 minutes of overtime, they beat the Sydney Millionaires, and it was the great young line of Leo Fay and Mel Gadd and Dougie Petrie. They were playing junior, and they were going back up and down, and they scored the winning goal in 93 minutes of overtime. And then the Strands played the Pictou County All-Stars, which had Tick Williams on that team. He played with the Maple Leafs. And they had the McGibbon brothers, and they were all paid imports. And we did very well. It was a 2-game total goal, but we did very well, and they finally beat us in the final game. And Pictou went and played Moncton, and Moncton won the Allen Cup. That's how close. And they're all local players. That played on that team. Lowell's father, Pounder Carmen, my brother Billy, Alec Passerini, the kid line there of the of Leo Fay, who later went up to New Glasgow and became playing coach there, lived there. Mel Gadd, who later went to Stellarton and lived there until he finished. He became a barber there. Okay, he played there, and the great Charlie Pyle went up and played with Truro. And they not only played hockey up there, but they played baseball in the summers, and that's what they did. Great athletes that were produced. So soon all of the great boxing, baseball, hockey, and basketball teams in the town became known as the Strands, from the Strand Gym. And Jack MacKenzie, now people don't know this, Jack MacKenzie became the coordinator of the entire operation, and he ran it. He was originally hired as janitor by Mount Carmel Parish in the 1930s because Mount Carmel owned the Strand. They brought it over, especially for to have bingo games. And he was alarmed to learn that they were considering closing the Strand, okay? And he and his committee soon came up with a plan to make the Strand Gym a viable and prosperous place for many years to come. They reinstated bingo games there on both levels, because on the top you had the main floor where they played basketball and they had the dances, but they also had some great fights there. Boxing, it was only small. And I was privileged to watch the great Tony Oda from town fight Tommy Peck from Lewisburg, and they never ever, the only way you would get out of that fight is if you got knocked out or you broke a leg or an arm or something, and they'd be full of blood. And the corner men, all they had was a bucket full of water, and there was no fancy dance stuff, and that was it, okay? And we had a lot of great fighters that fought there, okay? And these events proved popular, as many sporting events that followed at Strand Gym was viable once again. And this was mainly interested to Jack MacKenzie, who became the phys ed. He was everything. And I myself played, Simon White is here, and Simon and I we played on the first house league teams. That was in 1949. And Simon was the captain of our team. We were the Cubs. And of that, there's only about 5 left living in that, I think, there now. And we had a great, many of those people that were with us later went and played high school, and they played college and so on. And in 1953, the whole operation came to an end, because that's the year that the Mount Carmel Gym and the St. Agnes Gym were built, okay? And then you had and now they're going to tear down the Mount Carmel school there. And that gym was one of the best gyms that I ever had a chance to play. It had like a roller system underneath. And I played all over the Maritimes, and that was the best gym that I ever played in. But Jack was a great guy, and one amusing story has evolved over the years of how Jack was able to recruit help cleaning up the gym after bingo games. He got his help from some of us that he coached by dropping nickels and dimes in strategic spots, okay? And when some of the kids found them, they cleaned up. The word spread, and soon he had a virtual army of cleaners, okay? And the other thing, too, we used to do is after the Friday night dances, he used to let us in, and we helped clean up. And then he used to let us play on the floor for maybe an hour or so, and we only had one old leather ball, not like it is today, you know, with all the balls and everything they had. And so we had the old $1.29 gum boots on. You see, there was Dunlop, and they quit making them because you couldn't wear them out. Okay, and there was no worried about going on the floor with just sneakers. And we played there, and then who used to come in then was the great New Waterford Senior Strands, who won the Canadian Championship in 1947. And we used to, after we finished practicing, we'd clean her up a bit, and they came in, and I can tell you every one of them. Bucky Gillis, little hook shot he had. Lucius Ryan would twirling the ball on both sides. And you had Gregor's father, Martin McPherson, and Laddie Mahosky. See, the gym was built for big, strong guards and small, fast forwards. And Freddie Connors was the captain. Okay, and you had Marshall Laveau, who was over in Glace Bay there, He must be 100. He's close to it. Anyway, he was there. And the gym was built so that the top part, you couldn't go down and shoot the ball in the corners because you had the round where they used to play bingo was around and walk around that. So two of the best guys that I ever saw at shooting in that gym was Allie Leadbeater Sr., young Allie's father, and he was a great basketball player, and he come running down or jump on one side, and he'd shoot her low because you'd have to, off the backboards, okay, either side. When you're out in the middle, then you could shoot it high. And there was no one-handed shots then. It was all two-handed shots or layups. And the great Freddie Connors, I could still see him there, going when he had the white handkerchief right out of his belt, and he could handle the ball both times. He's a magician with the ball. And he'd come running down, all he'd do is come around and just flip her up this way. That's the way they used to shoot. Or they used to shoot with two hands this way. And the first guy that I ever saw, and it was in the Strand gym, a lot of other people didn't know, the Strand used to beat St. Avex varsity. You know, and a lot of people didn't know that, eh? And this time we went down to watch the game. They were playing St. Avex. And this guy comes out, and he's shooting a jump shot. Never saw that before. One had a jump. Hank Proper was his name, and he was from New York. Okay? Whereas O'Flaherty, the redheaded guard in the center, used to shoot them with the two-handers. And then you had the fast guys like Duffy. Duffy was the star of one of the stars when they won the Canadian Championship, because he was like Allie. He'd come down the side, bring it off the backboard, and shoot it low, you see. It was really, it was a great place. I grew up there, and that's why I learned basketball from Jack. Jack was not only a coach, but he was also refereed. He also organized. He started the house leagues. He coached all the teams. He won maritime champions in midget and junior and senior a number of times, and that great senior team there in 47. And besides that, he won other championships, and he's just a great guy. And I'll tell you a little story. With Simon and I, we had the house league, and we were coming up the floor, and I had the ball, and we were passing the ball. We were at the free throw line. Jack blew the whistle. He was refereeing. And he said to me now, he said, "What's the object of this game?" Well, I was 13 years old. I don't know. You got to win, I guess. And he said, "How are you going to do that?" Well, I said, "You got to get more points than the other game." "How are you going to do that?" "Well, I guess you got to shoot the ball." "Yeah." He said, "Is this a good place to shoot the ball?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Shoot the ball." I never forgot that in the rest of my life, okay? And I became a good shooter myself because I learned that lesson. And not only that, the next time I came up the floor, that's the foul line. 5 feet back, I started shooting, okay? And he was a great. So I used that tactic. George used it down there when we had the senior teams. We had no league, and we used to play the high school teams. And Central had a great high school team. George was only in grade 8, I think, and I used to guard him, eh? And I'd say, "Shoot the ball." Okay? And George always tells that story. Okay? So Jack was an outstanding athlete in his younger days, but it was his coaching and mentoring skills that made him a legend. He started his career as a team player for the Waterford Strands basketball team in the early 1930s, but shortly afterwards he realized that coaching was his great love. Many of the sports teams in those early years were male-dominated, but Jack had the foresight to see that women wanted to play as well, and under his initiative, the first of many ladies' basketball teams were formed in Waterford in the mid-1930s, and my wonderful sister Stella played on one of those teams. And these were the forerunners of many successful female basketball teams in town. And Joni over here, she was on, I think, the first women's basketball team that played and won the championship, Nova Scotia from the Waterford with Mud McDonald and those other people. And going back to George, said, "George, they even had Protestants and Catholics playing together." Okay? The women's basketball of that era played by very different rules. And even when I coached at Mount Carmel in the early 60s, we had 6 players on the girls' team. 3 forwards, 3 guards, and only the 3 forwards could shoot at one end, and the 3 guards had a guard. Now, the 3 forwards could only go 3/4 of the way, and they could only shoot at one end. That's in 1960 now. And in the Strands time when Jack was coaching, and Jack was smart as a whip too, you see, because he always had a good tall center. Gussie McNeil and Richie McDonald were 2 of the best, because after every basket, you never took the ball out. You had to go and have a jump ball at center court. So after we scored, then we'd come back up to center court, and if we had a good tall center, we could get the ball. We'd keep the ball half the game, you see, if you had a good center. Eh? And that's the way it was in those days. We used to watch them. And the Strand gym had 3 windows across each side, and you could get 3 or 4 of us in each window, and we used to, force our way in there. We watch all the games. And then Sandy Burns is here, right? The young Sandy, well, his father's brother, Martin Burns, he was the official scorer of all the games in the Strand. And all he had was a little piece of chalkboard and a eraser and a piece of white chalk. But he always had a box of white chalk that he used to scrounge from the schools, you see, to have. But he scored every game in every basket that way there. Then when it came halftime, and then we used to get out on the floor with our gumboots on and so on, and they'd let us go and shoot some during the halftime stuff, okay? And Jack, like I said, he coached a number of firsts. In 1950-51, he and Foxy Chesson coached the first interscholastic Nova Scotia basketball championship to come to New Waterford. And they won that down in Liverpool. And they had great players, Bernie Gallant, Bernie Chesson, and Nicky Hogan, a lot of those fellas. And a lot of them went on to play later, too, in higher divisions. And he also coached the first, like I said, first junior basketball Nova Scotia championship, first midget basketball Nova Scotia championship, and Lowell's father and my brother Billy and Marshall Laveau, they won that up in Moncton after losing the first game, and then they came back and they beat Moncton. And that was the first midget championship they won. Then they won a number of maritime senior championships, and the first one they won in 1938, and they lost in the Canadian Championship to the great Ottawa grads, and they were only a bunch of college guys, and these were guys who worked in the pit and everything. And the one great guy besides Back was Joe Chesson. He used to call him Joe the druggist because he owned a drugstore and he backed them, okay? And they used to play. They played in Montreal and lost close Canadian Championship. Then they got the Ottawa Grats back in 1947 and beat them for the championship, okay? And Jack joined the Navy in 1942, where he served as a physical education instructor. And at the end of the war, he immediately returned to coach the intermediate strands to the maritime title in 46, 47, in what has become the crown jewel in his coaching accomplishments. His strands team won the men's maritime and Canadian championships, and they were able to get back at the Ottawa Grads because that's who they beat in the Canadian championships at the Strand Gym. In addition to coaching the team, Jack planned and coordinated the entire tournament. The following season, the same team narrowly lost out in the Canadian finals in Montreal. This historic team has been duly recognized by being inducted into Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, and the Waterford Sports Hall of Fame. In his earlier days, Jack started a house league, which I had Simon and I played in, a house league for basketball at the Strand Gym, where he coached all the teams, refereed all the games, coordinated the whole schedule, and he seemed to know instinctively that the pathway to success for Strand teams was in the development of younger players. And we're the only place around. We had house league, bantam, midget, juvenile, junior, senior basketball teams. Nobody else had that hierarchy that he had. He seemed to know instinctively that the pathway to that success was the development of the younger players. He also understood that the house league would give the average players a chance to play more regularly as well. Jack's family still hears stories to this day from his former players of the respect they had for him and how he helped them achieve goals, not just sports, but in life in general. Okay? And Jack's master plan of developing young players paid off greatly for him through his coaching career, which in 1951 they won the first Interscholastic Championship with Foxy Championship. And it was in 1953 that this Mount Carmel school was built, as well as St. Agnes. In fact, that 1953 school, that was the first year. We graduated from that year in the spring of 1954. We got into used the gym in December of 1953, and we thought we were in Madison Square Garden compared to what we played in the Strand gym, okay? And it was, like I said, one of the best gyms that I ever had a chance to play. A lot of championships won in that gym, okay? High school and senior. And so with the opening of this new gym, Mount Carmel, the Strand officially ended its function, okay, as the site of basketball tournaments. But Jack continued for many years to provide an open door for kids to just come in and play basketball. We used to go down and be there. We just used to be able to go in and shoot some hoops there because it wasn't being used anymore, to help hone their skills. Jack welcomed all of these kids to the Strand, and many will profess their personal respect and admiration for him to this day. There's a funny story from his coaching days where he had set up, this is a dandy, where he set up all of the things, a badminton net. We committed, it was a badminton. Never saw badminton before in their lives, okay? And he had this net set up. And so he was there. He said, come on. So one of us grabbed the racket and started playing. As soon as the bird would come over, and we'd try and whack, and she'd go, boom, and she'd stop, eh? And he'd be in there, he'd just tap it nice and easy over here. All you were doing was running all over the place, and he wasn't running anywhere, okay? And he had a great time with that. But that's the first time we ever saw one of that. But as we got along, we got a little smarter then, too, okay? Okay? And after that, like I said, my favorite story was the one about where he told me to, shoot the ball. That stayed with me forever because I used it a lot there with younger guys when we were coaching too. Okay, it's well documented. That Jack contributed greatly to the overall development of basketball in the Water. He also left his mark on the sports of baseball and hockey because Jack was a great catcher. And at the end of the imports there in the 30s, at the end, Jack played in that league in the 1940s, and then Pushy's rink was located directly across where Kentucky Fried Chicken is. That was Pushy's. So we had a number of rinks. We had the Hawks rink, Pushy's rink, Heinecamp's rink, New Victoria had one, and they all had the boards. And in fact, the Hawks rink, 2 years in a row, they won the Cape Breton Intermediate Hockey Championship just with outdoor, playing on the outdoor rinks, okay? And so Jack got also involved with that, and he was involved, okay, with coaching, and especially the 1945-46 team that won the Cape Breton Championship by beating out the Sydney Millionaires. Jack managed the team, and he also helped. Larry Dobransky was the coach, and he used to help out Larry sometimes when he needed it, okay? He was a great baseball player in 1945. He and my brother Billy were the two catchers, and the Waterford Strands won the Cape Breton Senior Baseball League Championship, and they played off with the great Spring Hill Fence Busters, the best baseball team in the Atlantic province and the Maritime provinces. Had a lot of great players. We lost out to that team, but we had same thing. I had all local guys, Pounder there, Billy and Leo Fay and Eddie Gillis and those fellas. And then later on, some of those players actually went up and played in the senior league in Truro and Stellart and in Kentville, okay? And we produced so many great athletes and great teams. It's not even funny. In fact, we always used to say that if you took our town per capita and match it with any place in the world, and we'd be just as good as anybody for what we produce in the way of teams and people, okay, in that situation. Sadly, Jack passed away on December 31st, 1973, at the young age of 61 years. He was truly mourned by the community he served so well, and he left behind a coaching legacy that will probably never be matched. It has been my great honor, and I like a fellow said, I could tell a lot of other stuff, but we got a time limit now to okay, and I need to tell you a story. Okay, so now that, okay. So officially, I would like to call on the children, Cece and Joni and Lucille and Claudia, as well as the daughter Diane, to come forward and accept this great award for a great guy.
For a picture there. Okay? Good? Somebody want to say something? Okay, folks, we're going to have Lucille say a few words on behalf of the family.
It's going to be very short. It's my pleasure to be here. This great award to keep the memory of our father alive. I want to thank sincerely the entire committee, and especially I have a thank you for Joanne McDonald, for her patience with us getting this presentation done, and a special thank you to Carol Marsh from the family. Thanks ever so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, folks.
I better get back to work.
He's still talking over there.